Well, there won't be a pause. Welcome to the MusicNut program. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining me today. And welcome to a new show that we have here on the MusicNut program, The Live Cut. This show is going to be a discussion about underrated live albums that don't have enough love. I am privileged to have as my first guest on the live cut today, as well as my first guest ever on the channel. The man who not only came up with the logo for John the Music Nut, but also came up with the title for this show, Ernesto Ramos. How you doing, my friend?
Good, John. Thanks for being letting me be here with you.
You're welcome, and thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So, we are going to discuss today Accept Staying Alive. And what we're going to do is we're going to show the album here. There we go. Now, we're going to discuss this album today. This was an album that was released in 1990 after Accept had broken up after the Eat the Heat album. This album was recorded during the Metal Heart Tour. It was recorded on September 18, 1985 in Festival Hall at Osaka, Japan. This album was produced by Stefan Kaufmann, who is also the band's drummer. Except at this point, were promoting their Metal Heart album, and they were at their peak. This lineup is considered the classic lineup of Accept. We have Udo Dirkschneider on lead vocals. We have Peter Baltus on bass guitar, Wolf Hoffman on rhythm and lead guitar, Jörg Fischer on rhythm and lead guitar, and Stefan Kaufmann on drums. This album was released as a single disc version and then later as a 2-disc version, and that's the version that Ernesto and I are going to talk about today. The 2-disc version that came out has the entire show that was played in Osaka, Japan, in the exact order that the songs were performed. So we're just going to go back to just seeing Ernesto and I now. Ernesto, when were you first familiar with this album?
I think the first time I heard Accept was probably when I was a teenager.
Me
But when
too.
I heard this album, I was probably already high. Yeah, I think I was already out of high school. And I got it back in the day. I think I got the single disc. And I think I even had the tape at once, which was great because you could put that in your car,
Right, exactly.
and you enjoy it. And but this was like a very, very strong album, from Accept. Just amazing album. And look at the inside. It's like, can you see it?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, and Ernesto and I were talking about this off screen, this was released on Epic Records in the United States, and this was released on RCA BMG in Europe.
Yeah.
Ernesto actually has the Japanese version. So
Yeah.
Ernesto, show those liner notes. Oh, there we go. It's
Japanese. And then, of course, the lyrics, which doesn't have it on the American version, but it does.
right.
I think, does it have it on the European version? I'm not
On
sure.
this version here, we do not have lyrics.
Oh,
We
okay.
do have a biography of the band,
Yes.
and which you have on yours as well. But
Right.
we have it. We have it in English, and we
Yes.
also have it in German.
Yes.
But yours are in English and Japanese,
Yes.
and mine does not
And
have lyrics.
yeah, and that's what I was looking forward to, the lyrics, because we all know the lyrics are a little controversial. If you
Exactly.
know about Accept, you know that it's very how would I say what would you say? Very androgynous, very
Risque.
risque.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. you know, pretty dirty lyrics if you think about it. But you don't think about that when you're when you're a young guy, you're listening to this music, you don't think about that. You just thinking
When
about
we were young, when we were teenagers listening to this album, yeah, we weren't thinking about the lyrics. We just wanted to make sure the songs rocked.
yeah, exactly. And
Nice.
boy, it's out there. But the great thing about this one too is like I was telling you, John, it has the autograph thing in the back.
That is sweet.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then it has the records back here
Mm-hmm.
that got released. So I go, wow, this is pretty good. I mean, I'm glad I got this copy of it.
Nice.
But yeah, what are we gonna start with? What do you want? What do you want to do? It's like we
Let's
can
talk.
just
Let's just both review the album. You could talk about the album, and then I'll give my take, and then we'll go from there.
yeah. Well, let's start off with the song list, right?
Sure.
So we start off with Metal Heart. Now, Metal Heart, powerful opener, signature classic inspired guitar. That's one of the best songs from this. And here's the thing about this live album: it's it's very raw. You know,
It's raw, but I think it's very well produced. I think Stefan did a great job producing it. And
right?
one thing I don't mean to interrupt, the rhythm section is
Yeah.
really up in a mix. Stefan is a drummer. You hear him very, very well, particularly a snare drum.
Yes. Very, very. And then you got the next song, which is Breaker. Now, Breaker, that is fast, aggressive, just classic accept right there. That's
Mhm.
great song that was added. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, then you got Screaming for a Love Bite. That's a very poppy song, very classic poppy kind of, very, very melodic, but it's a heavy track and it's got catchy riffs. That for me, that would have been like the killer single right there for that album. You know.
Would you have preferred that as the single over Midnight Mover, which was the single and video when it came out?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Even with the title?
Yeah, the title's a little, yeah.
The song about a hickey.
Yeah, exactly.
Or getting a
Yeah, the
hickey.
title. Oh God. I mean, some of the titles they come up with are pretty good. This one, Scream for a Love Bite, was a little, I don't know.
And just before we go on, the lyrics at this point were written by Deefy, who is Gabby Hawk, who
Right,
would later manage Accept, and she would be married to Wolf Hoffman for several decades. They're
right,
not together anymore, I believe, but
right.
she was writing the lyrics to all of the albums. I'm not sure exactly when it ended. It might have ended
I think
maybe
it meant
when it, I'm sorry.
no, Russian roulette,
Oh, I
maybe.
was thinking, I think she may have written the lyrics up until Blood of the Nations.
Oh, maybe, yeah,
And then
maybe.
maybe by that point it would have been Mark Tornillo.
Mm,
But
yeah,
I believe that's the way it was. I
yeah,
believe
maybe.
like when they came back in the 90s with Objection Overruled, the Death Row and Predator, I believe she was writing the lyrics then too. I
Right.
could be wrong.
Now, a lot of people didn't know this, but yeah, she was writing the lyrics, not the
Yeah, we didn't
guys.
know that back then because she wrote under the name Deefy. We didn't know who Deefy was.
Right. So could you imagine? We're all singing these songs and like jamming on them and like, oh my God, this woman write these songs.
As there's a woman writing these lyrics to songs like Turn Me On and
Yeah.
London Leather Boys and
Yeah.
Screaming for a Love Bite
Screaming for a Love Bite and then Head Over Heels.
and Head Over Heels.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what's the other one? Losing More Than You Ever Had.
Losing More Than You've Ever Had, which
Yeah.
would have been a great track on this.
Oh, yeah. Sad. Yeah. We'll talk about that. But
Exactly.
it's her lyrics that moved you, man. I mean, those lyrics were like, whoa, they blew you away what she
Yep.
was writing about. But
Absolutely.
she was what they consider now as a ghostwriter, because that's what they call them now, ghostwriters. And so, yeah, her lyrics were raw and very different, and for the time, you know what I mean. Now it's
Exactly.
not that controversial.
And plus the fact that her main language and the band's main language at that time was German.
Yeah, exactly.
English was the second language, so some of the lyrics may have been come off a little off kilter, like Scorpions
You're
would have
right.
been in the 80s, but then Herman Rarebell started writing lyrics.
Right.
So, but if you think about the 70s albums, when Klaus and Rudolph were writing the lyrics, they you could tell that English was not their first language.
Right. Right.
So,
Exactly.
okay. So next we have Up to the Limit.
Up to the Limit. Mid-tempo rocker, driving rhythm, great song, perfect for this album, you know. So that's another great song that they added. And then Living for Tonight, wow, that's another good one. High energy, perfect for a live setting. That's just a great song, you know. Then we got Princess of the Dawn, slower, like a haunting melody. It's just an epic track, you know. You don't think about these guys singing those type of songs, but boy, it sounds great, man. Udo is just on point on this album. His voice is crazy wild. It's, man, amazing. Then you got Neon Nights, another good song, very atmospheric type song, deep. Uh, then we got Burning. Burning is that one, that monumental type of song that just keeps going and going and going. Very intense song. So next song we got Head Over Heels.
Now
Now,
we're on this
solid
too.
rock. Yeah, solid rocker, great groove. You know, we're continuing the great songs that are coming out of here. You know, then the next song, well, the next one is actually the guitar solo that a lot of people in the States didn't get to hear, which is the guitar solo for Wolf. That was taken out. That Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was gonna say I was listening to the one disc version today, and the guitar solo from Wolf is on there.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, but what they took off was
Oh,
Neon Nights and Burning and Head Over Heels and the
oh,
outro Bound to Fail. But
okay.
we did get Wolf's guitar solo.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, you know how good that was.
I'll
That
go
just,
more into depth in a little bit on that.
oh, that's amazing. And that's why when we talk about great guitarists, he always gets left out. And it's really sad because he's an amazing guitarist and nobody talks about him as much. But maybe soon we'll be talking about him.
Maybe. You never know.
You never know. And then the next would be Restless and Wild, which is from the guitar solo to intro to Restless and Wild, one of the most iconic songs ever written. Speed, aggression, everything. Fast, man. I mean, crazy, wild. I mean, you're talking about the beginnings of like a thrash song, right? It's just got that power, man. Unbelievable song.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Then we got Son of a Bitch. Now, I didn't hear that song until I heard the live album, and then I
Okay.
go, "Wow!" You from the live album compared to the radio of the album, totally different. The intensity is different. It's very like a rebellious, attitude-filled song. Okay, deep. It's got balls without saying balls to the walls, but
Exactly.
it's got balls, and it's one of those songs that you can't appreciate until you hear it live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great song. Very great song. Well, we won't even get into the lyrics because the lyrics are very, very risque.
Oh yeah.
And then we got London Leather Boys. That's a really, really unique, different kind of song. Very gritty, hard hitting song. Great song, though. I love it.
We got some risque lyrics on that too.
Risque, too. Risque. And we got Love Child. Another great song. They just keep getting better and better. Love Child is a gem. Strong riffs. I love that song. It's just intense. Great song. Then we're coming up to Flash Rocking Man. Okay. Fast paced, energetic performance from that. Good song. Okay.
Absolutely.
Next is Dogs on Lead. Now that's a deep cut. It's just so, I don't, it's kind of hard to describe how great that song is, but it's part of that set list that should be automatically on a live album. You know what I mean? From Accept. Great song. Then we come down, of course, to one of the most intense, fastest songs they've ever written in their catalog, Fast as a Shark. Fast as a Shark. What can we talk about? What can we say about Fast as a Shark other than that it's considered probably one of the best songs written from Accept, but it's got so much creed to it from other bands that respect Accept, that love Accept, because when they hear Fast and the Shark, they're realizing, wow, what a great song. That's just amazing song. You know?
Speed metal before we had a name for it.
Exactly. Thank you, John.
You got it.
And we got the last, well, kind of the last. We got Balls to the Walls, the grand finale, extended with audience participation.
Lots.
Which the Japanese love that. They love participating. They love all that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's why they have the best concerts over there.
And you know, it's funny you mention that because sometimes there's concerts that they're very quiet.
Right.
And maybe it's more because of sporting events, they're really quiet.
Right.
And concerts sometimes they're very quiet, but then they go ape shit after the song is over.
Right.
But on this album, and there's a lot of other albums recorded in Japan, Cheap Trick at Budokan's first one jumps out at me where the crowd is rabid the whole time.
Right.
That's what you got on here.
Yeah, you do. And then you got the outro, Bound to Fail. That's with the crowd noise and everything and the fading music. That's kind of like considered an instrumental, right?
That's actually, it's the recording of the last track on Metal Heart, Bound to Fail. At the end is what they're playing here is the end of Bound to Fail, but it's a recording. And to this day, they still end their shows that way.
Oh, okay.
They still end the shows that way, and they take their bows and thank the crowd.
Yeah. Well, what can we say about this album other than it's raw, energetic? It showcases the best tracks of their live settings. And here's the great thing about it. There's not that overpowering audience noise. Where sometimes some live albums have that overpowering live audience noise.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And so I think with this recording, you don't have that. And you get to hear the performances and you get to hear the artists and you hear everything, man. Everybody on here is on point. The drummer, the bassist, the two guitars, Udo's vocals. I mean, on point. This thing is like amazing, man. You know, and I feel bad because a lot of people don't talk about this album that much. They don't give it enough street credit, and it's just, I mean, yeah, of course it's not Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous. It's not Live After Death. It's not made in Japan. It's not made in Europe. You know what I mean? But, you know, it's badass, man.
It is badass, and I think what really hurt this album is timing.
Right.
Why wasn't this released in 86?
True.
We got the Kazuka Ban EP,
right.
which actually was the Nagoya, Japan show, and we only got 6 songs from it. Right. And then on later remastered versions of the studio albums, we got the tracks from that EP. Right. This should have came out before Russian Roulette.
Oh, yeah.
Because Metal Heart was the band trying to be more Americanized, but still maintain their metallic crunch, as you exhibited here in your comments. These songs sound very riveting live. Some of these are the definitive versions of these songs.
Right.
And if this came out in 86, maybe Accept would have had a better fate. Because Metal Heart didn't do well, but if they came out with this at a time when Iron Maiden came out with Live After Death, that sold very well.
Right.
We had Scorpions with Worldwide Live, that sold very well. Those albums arguably came out at their commercial peaks, except we're close to their commercial peak here, not as big as those bands. I think if this came out when, and maybe in late 85, early 86,
Right.
maybe they'd be a bigger band today. Maybe more
Yeah.
people would know these songs instead of them being more like a cult band now.
Yeah.
I mean, you put it out in 1990, and by this point, they're no longer a band.
Right. Right.
So the only people who are really going to hear this are diehards like us.
Yeah.
You know, like passionate fans
Right.
are going to hear this, and that's all that's going to hear it, and which is a shame. But when I listen to this album, like I said, you got the definitive versions of a lot of these songs. You definitely got to go with the 2-disc version over the 1-disc version, because
Right.
the versions of Burning and Head Over Heels,
Breaker.
I'm sorry?
Breaker.
Well, Breaker's already on here, but okay, when we go into the tracks, that 1-2 punch, Metal Heart into Breaker is killer. And the version of Breaker on here is insane because it's even faster than the studio version. It is wicked. Then we got great versions of the next 3 tracks, Screaming for a Love Bite, Up to the Limit, and Living for Tonight, which were all on Metal Hearts. And then we go into Princess of the Dawn, which is a cool version. The next 2 songs, the last 2 songs on the first disc that are not on the 1-disc version are killer. Neon Nights, you got that guitar solo coming in before they go into the track, which has always been full of drama. Very strong track. We got an 8-minute version of that. Burnin' destroys on here.
Yeah.
And if to all of you who've never heard Burnin', it's a deeper cut on Breaker. It's a song that's so cool they should still play it live today, but they don't. It's like Chuck Berry on steroids. Chuck Berry doing a heavy metal song. That's what this is. And it is a wicked version. We got fantastic call and response between Udo and the band and the crowd here. It is excellent. We do have an unaccompanied solo in here that kind of goes into a Johnny B. Good type thing.
Yes.
And that's Jorg on that guitar solo here, because we get Wolf later.
Right.
It is riveting. It is killer. Head Over Heels. It starts disc 2. We start with a bass solo from Peter Baltus, and we got nice call and response between Peter playing a note and the crowd, responding to that and going, hey, hey, hey. And then we go into the song itself, and the bass sounds really up front. It is an excellent version. Peter's bass on here, on the songs that have a lot more space between the notes, you really, really hear Peter on.
You do.
Really up in a mix, and you really get a great exhibit of what a strong bass player he was. And he's another guy in this band who doesn't get the recognition that he gets, that he should get. As with Stefan Kaufman, he produced this album. You can really hear his drums on here, maybe a little too loud. You really hear that snare, but he's a beast.
Yeah, he is.
Beast of a drummer. He was fantastic. In the guitar solo from Wolf, you get the beginning riff from Aiming High, which would be on Russian Roulette. And then you get Wolf playing Edvard Grieg's In the Hall of the Mountain King.
Right.
And that would be a prelude. Well, he was doing a lot of classical work on Metal Heart, on the song Metal Heart. The solos were taken from classical pieces as well as Bound to Fail. But here you got In the Hall of the Mountain King, which is really, really cool. Excellent. And then when we go into Restless and Wild, it's into Son of a Bitch. It's more of a medley. Because Restless and Wild, we don't get that killer bridge. It just goes right into that sinewy riff, that riff of Son of a Bitch. We actually get the full version of Son of a Bitch, which is only a 2.5-minute song anyway.
Yeah.
But Udo sings the hell out. Udo's vocals, as Ernesto alluded to. Udo was having fun here.
Yeah.
He was into this show because if you think about it, at the time this they did this tour in '85. They were an opening act in the United States.
Right.
They're opening for Iron Maiden on the World Slavery Tour. They go to Japan. They're headliners. They're conquering heroes.
Yeah.
Even though they're from another country, they're from Europe or from Germany. Then they're playing in front of a Japanese audience. The crowd is eating it all up.
Yeah.
And you hear that throughout. And the performances on here are exhilarating. London Leather Boys, you got that great bass line from Peter right up front going into that. That kicks ass. Love Child.
Damn. Good
Very
song.
strong. I mean, and even better than the studio version from Balls to the Wall, which is already good. This is a song about androgyny.
Yeah.
They were talking about a lot of deep stuff on these albums.
Yeah.
He was writing the lyrics to. Flash Rockin' Man. Let me ask you a question, Ernesto. When I hear this riff, this was originally on Restless and Wild.
Right.
I always thought 2 minutes that Iron Maiden borrowed this for 2 minutes to midnight.
Yeah, right. This sounds like, right?
It does. And this was like a year and a half before Power Slave came out.
Yeah.
I always thought they borrowed that riff. Every time I listen to this, I'm like, I'm waiting to hear Kill the Gain.
No, it's true.
We don't need a reason. Yeah, I'm messing up the lyrics of 2 minutes to midnight. But when I hear that riff, I think Iron Maiden borrowed that one.
Probably. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, it's still a great song, though.
It is a cool
song. It's a fun song.
No doubt. And this actually ended the concert proper because Udo says, thank you, good night. And then they go into the first encore, and that's Dogs on Lead. And Dogs on Lead is killer. I love Dogs on Lead.
It kind of sounds, Dogs on Lead has that intro, that Western intro that I love.
Yeah.
Love that.
Awesome. And heavy.
Yeah.
And that bridge is so heavy, too, when they play that march. Stefan's playing that march beat. And then you hear Udo's vocal gaining more and more emotion and more momentum. And he's getting like firing out those lyrics before they go into Wolf's wicked solo on there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Then we get Fast as a Shark, which is blinding fast on here. Wicked sin. Awesome version. And then we get a 10-minute version of Balls to the Wall with a ton of audience participation. They still do this in this way when you see them live to this day, because you still hear the band going, oh. They're still doing that. And that they did this here. I mean, you're figuring we're only one album after that album, and the crowd is singing along to this like not missing a beat.
Yeah.
Udo is really working the crowd very well throughout this album, including especially on this song. And we have the outro to Bound to Fail, where they just played a recording of the end of that song. And that's a great way to end this very underrated live album called Stayin' Alive. So, Ernesto, we were talking off air about other versions of this album that came out on other formats that you saw in record stores and video stores back in the day.
Yeah. The first time I heard about it was on VHS when they did the concert. It came out back then on VHS. Of course, it was very hard to get a hold of it because it was only available in Japan. Then they released it on Laserdisc, which was great, man. That's perfect, to have it on Laserdisc. Of course, not everybody can afford a Laserdisc player back then.
That's true.
Back then. And then eventually in the 1990s, late 1990s, is when they released it on a DVD. It was like a 2-disc DVD, maybe a 1-disc, I don't remember, but I think it was a 2-disc. And it had like a greatest hits, and then it had the concert on there together. I think the name of it was called Vaults or something like that, or I forgot the name, but that was the only way to get a hold of this concert, because there was no way you can get a copy of it in Japan, because very rare. But yeah, now you can find it on YouTube. Thanks to YouTube, you can find it on there. I mean, not the greatest quality, but you can find it on there. And but we also have to think about this. Was there any songs that you think would have been perfect on this album that were let out, that were not put on here? So let me ask you this: what songs would you have put on there?
I would have put Thunder and Lightning on here from I'm a Rebel. I would have liked to have at least seen I'm a Rebel be represented on this album. And if they were to do one on the self-title debut, Tired of Me would have been a great choice too, because
Mm,
Tired of Me is very, very heavy.
right.
And it would sound as menacing as it was then. Can you imagine Udo singing it in '85 when he really truly found his voice? I
Right.
think it would have been a wicked version. But my two would be Tired of Me from the debut and Thunder of Lightning, a great anthem, very underrated album, or underrated song from I'm a Rebel, which I'm a Rebel. They were still trying to find their sound because they had a few songs that were really heavy on there.
Yeah.
I cut out again. They had a few songs on there that would really point to their future. And then you had some songs on there where they were trying to find their sound, like Save Us, which I always thought sounded like a Pat Benatar song. So, but Thunder and Lightning, yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been my first pick, and Tired of Me right after that. What about you, Ernesto?
Now that's a good question. I would have picked The King, of course, because I love that song. I think that would have been a great song, even though it's kind of like a ballad. It's a slow song. I think the Japanese audience would have loved it. Maybe put it at the end. I don't know. I wouldn't know where to put it because all the songs are so intense and
Maybe
fierce.
early,
Maybe.
maybe earlier in the set after, maybe after I'm looking at maybe after Living for Tonight and before
Yeah.
Princess of the Dawn, because you do the ballad, you give Udo a little break
Yeah.
because Peter sings the song, and then you go back into Princess of the Dawn, and we're getting heavy again. That's my opinion.
That's true. Good. Yeah. Good call on that. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I would have put The King, and then I think I said what was the other one I said? Um, Run if
Run if
you
you
run
can.
run if you can. That's another great song. I like
Great.
that song. Yeah, it's a weird song about a vampire or something like that, or something like that. It's kind of a weird song. And but I love that song too. I think that would have added that, you know, to the track list. But then again, I still think, wow, there's so many great tracks on Balls to the Walls that I would have added, like Losing More Than You Ever Had. That is just a great track, man. Oh
Absolutely. And
man.
on this tour, speaking of ballads with the King, they
Yeah.
actually did Winter Dreams on on like at least 12 dates on this tour.
Yeah,
Along with
well, that's
Setlist
that's
FM.
another one. See, yeah. I mean, I don't know if they could have done that many great ballad type songs on this album because it was all intense. Everything was intense.
It was.
The only mellow song that was cut was Princess of the Dawn, right? It was kind of a little mellowish.
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, I guess that's like the mellowest song on the album,
Yeah,
even though it's not really a mellow track. It's just more this mid-tempo groove,
right.
you know? So, I mean, but if you want to put on a rock show, yeah, you might want to keep the ballads out. It's a tough call.
It is.
Now, Midnight Mover was performed on this tour 25 times,
Wow.
at least, according to Setlist FM, but it was not performed on the Japanese dates. It was performed on the American dates, which
Wow.
is interesting considering this was the video and single in the US.
Yes, and it's a great song.
And it's a great song, but what would you take out, you know?
I know. That's
I
true.
know that I know that we both prefer Screaming for a Love Bite over that song as much as we like Midnight Mover.
Right.
But I couldn't take Screaming for a Love Bite out. It's funny now because when you go to see them live, they don't do Screaming for a Love Bite anymore, but they'll still pull out Midnight Mover because of the
Yeah.
video.
Well, I think, and I hate to do this, but I would probably take out Living for Tonight,
Okay.
maybe, and put Midnight Mover in there because it's such a great song and it's just one of their hits, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely. That's a tough one to take out because Living for Tonight is
yeah,
become one of their most enduring songs. It's a song they still put in the set list to this day. It's not
yeah,
something they always play like Balls to the Wall or Metal Heart or Fast as a Shark, but you
yeah,
still see it in there like every now and then they'll pop that one in.
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, I would do that. I would have put Midnight Mover, pull out Living for Tonight, and then just switch it up. But it's so hard. I don't know. It's a,
Right.
I would put all of them in there.
Yeah,
Because
that's the thing. I mean, you there's a lot of people out there who love Accept. They would say the 4 albums that were represented on Staying Alive, Breaker, Restless and Wild, Balls to the Wall, Metal Heart. Those are the 4 best Accept albums. The
right,
order, it depends what you like. But
yeah,
a lot of people would say that's their 4. I would say 4 of the top 6 because I love Blood of the Nations and Stalingrad as well. I like them a little more than Breaker, but Breaker is great too.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
could say this is prime Accept because Udo sounded fantastic on here. You got the classic lineup because Jord played on the self-titled debut, I'm a Rebel. He and then he left the band and then he came back and he played on Metal Heart and
right,
Russian Roulette. And Herman Frank played on Balls to the Wall and on Restless and Wild. That was all Wolf on the guitar. They have Herman listed, credited, but he actually didn't play on it. But this is like the prime version. Not that the Accept now isn't great. They certainly are. They're still
right.
wonderful live unit that I've gotten to see 3 times in the last 4 years. And this is from the
Yeah,
Too
cool,
Young
sure.
to Die tour. Yeah, thank you. So, but yes, this is a very worthy album to be
Oh,
part of the live
it
cut.
is. You have to pick this up. If you love Accept, this is the album you need to pick up. Pick it up before you pick up Metal Heart.
I wouldn't deny that. And my Metal Heart is my favorite studio album by Accept.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't go wrong with Staying Alive, no doubt about it.
No, you can't.
So all of you who've been watching, thank you so much for joining us. What are your thoughts on this live album? What are your thoughts on the band Accept? What are your favorite albums by them if you're a fan? Do you prefer the albums with Udo? Do you prefer the later albums with Mark Ternillo on lead vocals? Do you like the 90s albums? Please let us know in the comments what you think of Accept Staying Alive. Ernesto, what do you got coming up on Grant's Rock? Just just let everybody out here know what you have on tap. Ernesto, you see on Grant's Rock Warehouse and other
Yeah.
channels. So
Well, I think we have some stuff coming up on Sydney's channel, which is Slogans Rock and Metal Emporium. We got a couple of shows on there, and on Grant's, I think we're doing the 1991. I think
that's
1991. Yeah,
June. First
that's the
Monday in
next thing.
June.
Yeah, I missed the last one because I was busy. I was working late.
Okay.
But hopefully I'll be on the 91. Hopefully, let's keep our fingers crossed. But
Absolutely.
I got some great ideas that I'm working on with Sydney and them, and hopefully we get those shows ready and put them out there. And then hopefully we got something else in the wings with John, right, John?
That's right. No doubt
So
about it. That's
let's see what happens.
yeah, definitely going to be upcoming. But I already gave Grant my list for 1991 because I already did a show on 1991 on my channel here.
Okay, cool.
And I'm looking at the list, and if y'all want a spoiler, I didn't change anything because I'm like, this list is perfect. And I'm thinking, what would I take out of here? And I had like so
Right.
many honorables, but oh yeah,
It's tough one, right? Tough.
it's a tough one. In 91, I was getting into so much different stuff.
Right.
I wasn't really listening to Accept in 91. I was
Right.
just listening to a lot more alternative music.
Right.
What we would call alternative, but later it became the norm. So yeah, I was getting into a lot of weird stuff, I guess you could some people would say. I love it though, but I
Right.
wasn't really a big heavy metal guy by 91. But yeah, I was definitely going all over the place. But that should be a fun show. And
Yeah.
that show, I believe, is Monday, June 3rd, 2025, 8 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Eastern. Yeah, now it'll be live on Grant's Rock Warehouse. So those of you who watch us on Grant's channel, please check us out that time. Thank you all so much for joining us. Ernesto, thank you so much for joining me today. It is a
Thank you, John,
pleasure
for
and a
having me
privilege.
on.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you on. And Ernesto will definitely be on some future shows. We already have a lot of things we've been discussing, whether we do this here, Grant's channel, or Sydney and Logan's channel. Sydney Slogan's Rock and Metal Extravaganza, I think it's called.
It's huge. It's big.
It is. It's big extravaganza. So definitely check out that channel if you haven't. They got a lot of great things going on that channel. They're Cindy and Logan are very passionate about what they talk about. They do a great job. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Do what you love, and we'll talk to you soon.